I've literally told this story a billion times. Like, I've literally tried to tell this story 100 times trying to film this video. Okay, so this story takes place my first and second year of college when I first moved to Northwest Arkansas. I went to a small community college in Northwest Arkansas, and there was a much bigger university there called U of A Fayetteville. And one of my friends that I had made, Libby, went to Fayetteville, and I went to the community college. So after I was done with school for the day or whatever, I would go to Libby's dorm and do homework. I would meet her roommates. Like, it was just like, I wanted to meet people my age and be able to hang around them all the time. And since I lived in an apartment, I was alienated most of the time. So I had met this girl named Chelsea. That's going to be her name, Chelsea. I met this girl named Chelsea, and she was just like a really cool girl, very pretty, very Southern, and I just like really liked her immediately. And one day we were at dinner a few months after getting to knowing each other. We were at dinner, and we just started like really having like those deep like get to know you conversations. And she had revealed to me that she had met this guy, and the guy was like really abusive to her. Like, they were in an abusive relationship. Her parents had to step in and get involved. They had to file restraining orders. I just remember sitting there at dinner and thinking to myself, like, wow, like, I can't believe she went through that, especially at such a young age. Like, when you hear stories like that, you think it only happens in Lifetime movies. Like, you never think it's going to happen to you. So, fast forward to the next school year, I arrived back at NWAC. It was a tough one because, like I said, I was alienated. My friends went to a different school. But at this time, I had made friends at my own college, honey, on my own campus, and I was living my best life. My first day of school, this guy caught my eye. He was tall, he was hunky, big muscles, and I was like, who is he? Like, I have to know him. And my friend Jessica was just like, oh, girl, bye. Like, he is not all that. And so one day we were all together and Jeremy was with us, and he came over and he like shook Jeremy's hand. He's like, oh, hey, buddy, like ask him about like a class assignment. And I was like, oh, Jeremy, like, who is your friend? He's like, oh, this is Justin. And I was like, oh, well, hey, Justin, like, nice to meet you. Because if you know me, you know that I'm like a very flirty person. And so, like, I was, like, really wanting to know, like, about this guy because he was, like, so mysterious and, like, I wanted to know who he was. From that moment on, like, him and I became friends. I would see him out on Dixon. We did have a few mutual friends that were new to the area, but because of his profession, he had just met them as well. So they didn't know much about him either, And, we were hanging out, never got any bad vibes from him or anything. Until one day, he was like, oh, you know Chelsea. And I was like, oh, how do you know I know her? And he was like, oh, I must have just seen it on your Facebook or something, or your Instagram. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I know her. Like, she was roommates with my friend that went to U of A. And he was like, oh, yeah, like, I'm like, oh, do you know her well? And he's like, oh, well, I kind of know her. Like, we're from the same area. I was like, oh, that's really, really cool. Like, that's really nice. One night, I saw him out and about on Dixon, and he pulled me to the side. He was, like, drunk, and he's, like, hugging me or whatever. And he goes, I have to tell you something. Chelsea, I know her better than what I told you. Like, I used to date her. So at that point in my mind, like, I was like, oh my gosh, like, is he the crazy guy she was talking about? Because at this point, I'm like, oh no, he's so nice. Like, that couldn't be the same guy. And I was like, oh, well, let's table this and we'll talk about it later. So when we were back on campus a few days later, we sat down, we were eating lunch, and he was kind of like, this is what happened. I did act inappropriate. He's like, but she blew it out of proportion. Like, pretty much like victim shaming her. And at the time, being 19, like, you're not thinking to yourself, you call her, listen to her. It was like, oh, I'm going to stay out of it. Like, it's not my business. Like, he's a different person now. The Me Too movement was not relevant in 2011, honey. She wasn't even thought of. So at that time, like, I didn't proceed with caution. Like, here was this guy. He was really nice to me. He was cute. Obviously, at that point, I had a crush on him. I never thought anything else of it. So him and I continued to be friends. One night, I was downtown in Fayetteville at this bar called Tangerine. And he called and he was like, hey, we're having this big party at my apartment. You should come over. I leave the bar. I had been drinking, unfortunately. Uber wasn't a thing either, honey. And I was like, oh, I've only got to drive down the street. Drove down the street, got to his house. Walked upstairs, knocked on his door. He opens the door and no one is there. It is me and it is him. And I was like, where is everyone? You know, because at this point I'm like, wait, why did you tell me you were having a party and there's no one here? He's like, oh, they left already. And so at this point, like, I knew something was up. Like, I knew something, like, did not feel right. And I was, like, uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? And so he's giving me a tour of his apartment. And, like, he takes me to his bedroom. And he's like, oh, yeah, this is my room. He's like, you can stay here with me. And I was just like, I'm not staying here with you in your twin bed. Like, no. Have you lost your mind? Like, no. That's weird. I'm okay. I'll just go over to my friend's apartment. He's like, no, stay here. He's like, I don't want to be myself. And so, remember how I told you he was doing, like, really touchy-feely? He became, like, aggressively handsy. Like, he was, like, hugging me. And, like, I was 6'1". I'm 6'4" now because I went through another growth spurt. I was 6'1", and he was, like, a big bodybuilder. By all accounts, he was much larger and stronger than me at the time. So at this point, we go back into the living room, and he's like, oh, you should have more drinks with me. So he's, like, trying to pour me more drinks, and I'm like, no. Like, I'm not drinking anymore. Like, I'm sorry. Because at this point, I'm obviously uncomfortable. And he's like, he took my keys. So, like, he took my keys and he put them in his pocket. He's like, well, fine, watch a movie with me. I'm like, well, are you going to give me my keys first? He's like, no, you're going to watch a movie with me. Like, forcing me to watch a movie with him. He has laid across, like, we're on a couch and I'm sitting upright. He lays across me. So, like, I can't even move. Like, I couldn't even get up. And he's still just being really uncomfortable. I'm, like, dozing out. Like, he's, like, grabbing me as I'm, like, falling asleep. I'm, like, waking up and I'm, like, hitting him. Like, it's, like, by all means, like, the most uncomfortable situation I had ever been in. Finally, the movie's over. He is like, oh, well, I'm going to start this next movie. So he takes my keys, his keys, everything out of his pocket. He puts them on the counter and he goes to the restroom. When I tell you, I grabbed those keys and ran down those stairs. Like, if y'all have ever seen What's Love Got to Do With It with Angela Bassett, and she's running across the street after her and I got in a fight, I ran down the stairs, girl, ran out of my shoes, had to pick up my shoe. I ran. I had a little white Pontiac Grand Am. I had that car on 2 wheels, period. Like, I was so mortified. I remember just calling my mom and just crying, and I was just so distraught and scared. Like, I didn't go back to school. I want to say I skipped school for, like, a week. I went back to school. My mom's like, you got to go back to school. I went back to school. I did everything different. I parked in a different spot. I entered different doors. I didn't go to the same places. I didn't even see my friends. My last class of that day, I had a 3-hour design lab. So I was a graphic design student, and so we had a 3-hour lab. I'm in class, and it's time to leave, and he's standing outside of the door. Like, he was waiting on me to get there. And, for me to leave. He was waiting on me to leave. He's standing at the door. I go to exit. He's like, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And I was like, why? Like, no, like, you don't need to talk to me. He's like, look, I apologize for what happened the other day. I was just really drunk. Nothing like that would ever happen again. Like, I'm sorry. Nothing like that's ever happened before. Like, you know, he was pretty much just saying, like, this was a one-time situation of him being, like, aggressive and scary and rapey. And, I mean, he's like, it would just never happen again. And I'm just, like, very sorry. And I was just like, okay. He's like, but look, if you tell anyone about this or you tell anyone, like, what happened, he's like, you and I are going to have, like, serious issues. And, like, pretty much he threatened me. It was pretty much like, if you tell anyone, like, what happened, like, I'm going to beat you up, I'm gonna attack you. Like, that's pretty much what he was saying. When he said, like, we're gonna have problems, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is crazy. He's going to kill me. Okay, so I just finished the story, and I know that I'm dressed different. I shot an ending to this video, but I just felt like I wasn't being socially responsible, so I just want to take the time out to do that. You know, during this time in college, I was, like, obviously very young, and, very scared, and I think, you know, thank goodness to the Me Too movement and things like that, I think if it would have happened now, I could have went about it in a different way. Unfortunately, I never said anything to anyone, and, I think it changed me, and for a lot of ways, it changed me for the worse. You know, being stalked by a super predator who not only was in a relationship with my friend, but then lied to me and became my friend, and then like innately tried to like sexually assault me. Well, did you know these things are not okay? And if you find yourself in one of these situations, like seek out help and really just tell someone because it's so scary. This story could have ended so much worse than it did, and I'm just lucky it didn't. And if you've followed this video this long, give it a thumbs up, give me a comment in the comment section, and I know this is a different pace than my normal videos, but I just wanted to share this with you. I was inspired by Netflix's You, and thanks for watching.